Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from MyersSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, March 25th. We're going to be talking more spring ball, more spring practice, probably more quarterback talk today. We're going to talk recruiting. It's picked up a little bit in terms of momentum. I do got to get those commitments and things of that nature, but things are trending a lot better than they were a week ago when we had this conversation. So that's good. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk some women's Notre Dame basketball. Headed to the Sweet 16, and they're going to face TCU, who they lost to earlier this year. And then Notre Dame Pro Day is coming up on Thursday. We'll talk about that as well. There's a bunch of players who didn't work out at the Combine. They did interviews. They're going to work out on Thursday on Notre Dame's campus. So we're going to talk about all those things. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell soon, whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD, get 10% off your entire purchase. It's esqclothing.com. Jamie, as I was prepping for this show, saw another Chad Bowden interview on the On Threes. Just loves it. Loves it.
He likes.
He loves that, man. He's out there talking to everybody.
I read it real quick, and it was pretty tame. I think just the fact that it's even out there. But I would say probably he probably realized he's like, I probably shouldn't have said that in the last thing. I'm gonna guess.
Maybe just settle down. That's probably maybe someone told him, hey, just let's chill out a little bit. So this come across the desk, Chuck. Melchior brought this up. This came across the desk earlier today. Under Armour is the new footwear for the NFL. It's got to be good news for future Irish cleats. I don't know what that means for Notre Dame. What I will say,
I got to say, a lot of NFL players not going to be happy.
What I will say is, I don't, whatever this means for that or whatever. What a rebound from Under Armour. They were dead. I thought they were gonna
they might not exist.
I was gonna say they're headed toward bankruptcy, and now they're the official NFL football footwear and gloves partner of the NFL. I mean, you know what? Credit again to Kyle Hamilton, who has been repped by Under Armour this entire time. Look, he knows where the trends are going. Jamie, the kid, his
don't think he wore Under Armour on the pro day though. So I'm just gonna say
I don't think he did, but you know what, Jamie, no free ads on that. You know what? You want me to wear it, you pay for it, and that's what they did. And so so he's an Under Armour guy. Now the NFL is Under Armour.
Yeah, Baltimore. That's that's home Under Armour.
That's right. So we're monitoring that situation. And I will say, on the footwear front, before we move on here, Matt had said something. This must have been however long ago, and this is major knock on wood. We'll just talk about last year, but he had mentioned you didn't get the foot injuries. You didn't get those foot injuries that we saw in camp, and in the lead up to the season. We didn't see it last year, and he was just saying maybe it was a type of strength and conditioning Notre Dame was doing that was what they were emphasizing at the time, that was kind of messing with guys' feet. And maybe Lauren Landau had what he was doing wasn't so bad for the feet there. So we're monitoring that situation. Again, knock on wood for that sort of thing, but that's something to keep track of. Recruiting, Jamie, it's picking up. It's picking up. A lot of good vibes on. Let's talk about Javion Osborne first. The running back out of Texas. He's planned an official visit to Notre Dame. The idea was that he was going to visit Michigan, or Michigan was his leader. Was going to visit Texas. Canceled the Texas visit, the official visit in the summer. Made an official visit for Notre Dame in the summer. Michigan was seen as a leader. Irish Sports Daily does not feel that way anymore. I think Irish Sports Daily feels Notre Dame has taken the lead here. He was pretty effusive in his praise of Notre Dame and Jawan Sider, running backs coach. It's a pretty big deal, right? He's a big time football player, and he kind of reminds me of, I'm curious if you feel this way as well, a little Torian Folston action. I think probably a little bit better long speed than Torian Folston had. But in terms of that build and that type of running back, I think that's what it is, and that's a take for Notre Dame if that's how it turns out.
Yeah, I would say like similar feet. When you kind of reminds me of him in that way. But yeah, I would say like he's one of these guys that I wouldn't say he is like elite burst, but you can see him pulling away. Like he's got home run hitter qualities.
Yeah.
I like him. Good contact balance. I mean, he's a very good prospect. That's somebody that if they were to only take one back, I mean, personally, I think I could see them taking two just because I think they could get two really good ones. And then I also think that there's a chance that Notre Dame's gonna maybe lose three backs after this year. Love and Price, but we'll see with Payne. You know what I mean? Just because he's like kind of getting there. It's like if depending on what his role is and all that kind of stuff too. I could see him not coming back. So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, I think you kind of want to get two if you end up losing three. Because right now they're deep and they still would be okay to take one, but I think you'd be better off with two. I really, really like Osborne though. He's a good prospect.
Very, very good player. We'll talk about Jabron Payne in a second because I think that situation is interesting. Jason Smith said, I was pretty surprised by just how big of a move Notre Dame made with Osborne. Shouldn't have been, I guess, but I didn't think he was really all that interested in Notre Dame prior. I think it's just one of these guys, like, he hadn't been there yet, and look, we know sometimes players get to Notre Dame and it's just their jam and they just like it and it fits with them and it fits with their personality and what they're looking for. And it's just like that Notre Dame is the type of place that, man, you go on that visit and it can change things. Obviously having Jawan Sider as well really helps because he's a big time running backs coach. He knows how to recruit these types of running backs. And look, he's good at it, right? He's good at his job. Let's just stick with this. Something Simple says, Greg and Jamie, let's say Osborne commits to Notre Dame. Where would you personally target for number 2? Is it a Messiah Mickens and call it a day or someone else to complement Osborne? Thanks. What do you think about this, Jamie? If Osborne was to lock in with Notre Dame, and again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. He does have to get committed, right? And everything we're talking about here in recruiting, like momentum is not like you got to get commitments, right? So I don't want to throw a big party just because like a bunch of guys like their visits to Notre Dame. That being said, what do you think about this? Who does this change? Who you would kind of target as the number 2? You said they might take 2.
No, not really. I just think you get like 2. You just get 2 good backs, and that's how I kind of see it. I just think that really like where they're at. Like I just think that like Brian Bonner is a different kind of back, but I don't think because he's different, like it doesn't make it like, oh, he's the guy for sure. But I really like Brian Bonner. That would be a huge, I mean, he is also a big time speed home run hitter kid. I think he's like a very similar to, it's funny because obviously, Jawan Sider is coming from Penn State. I think he's a very similar, when I look at him, he's smaller than he was in high school, but when I watch him and the way he runs, and the way some of like the open field cuts that he does, I think that he's very similar to Nick Singleton.
Yeah.
That's the guy he kind of reminds me of. So, and obviously they had Jonas Walton, who was visiting and is a very good back as well. Like, I don't know. And Mickens, whatever, we'll see. Because it's one thing to say like Mickens is like, whoa, his eyes are open. It's like, let's see till he visits and see, all that. But like, I wouldn't worry about them, even if they went late to get someone like you think of like, Nolan James and Audric Estime and all that too. Yeah. Like, I just think running back is specifically a position too, where guys the development of players as they get more carries and they're like kind of grow into that. And then also as they like get bigger and stronger and that part of it, you just see so much development with guys over the course of it where I think you can find guys if you want to, you can find guys as seniors like a lot easier than you can some of these other positions where you know, it's so scarce for to get defensive tackles. You're not going to sneak in a 6'4", 305-pound defensive tackle is not going under the radar, right? Where running backs, but I think they'll be fine with whoever they get as the two if they do get Osborne and someone else.
Yeah. So we'll continue to kind of look at that and you know, monitor how the running back situation goes. But it's off to a good start. Joey O'Brien was just on Notre Dame's campus as well for spring practice. A lot of positive momentum there in terms of where Notre Dame is with him. And I know that, you know, Mike Mickens, this is one of his top guys. Like this is someone who Mike Mickens has zeroed in on, really wants him. Obviously loves the length. He can play safety, he can play corner. Just ton of talent. He was just at an event. I think it was it an On3 event, Jamie? The what is it called? OT7 or
it was
something?
An OT7, yeah.
OT7, yeah. He was there, and I think he was the MVP of that. Big time prospect, and I know Notre Dame wants him bad. I know Mike Mickens wants him bad, and I kind of like the fact that, you know, Mike Mickens is going to go all in on a prospect. I kind of like him to land him. So where are you at with Joey O'Brien? I know he's been kind of discussed a bit. Where are you at with this recruitment?
Yeah, I mean, he is. I think what's most interesting about him is he reminded me a lot of Jadon Blair in that the fact that you watch him and you're like, this guy's just like a good athlete, like who's like a really good. And you know, Mike has talked about how like, oh, he'd want to see like Jadon Blair at receiver. I think Joey O'Brien could probably be a really good receiver in college too. He's got great ball skills, and obviously he, you know, one of the things that the reasons why he was MVP of OT7, he's picking the ball off a million times, right? So I like him at safety. I do think you watch him at corner, and he could play corner. He definitely has, I think, a lot of the traits that you see with like big corners who play for Mike Mickens. I get that too. So I think either way, he's a really, really good prospect, and I get it why, you know, Mickens would be so high on him. I think that's just another example too of like everybody, you know, Joey O'Brien was like someone for a long time. People said, oh, Notre Dame is like really good spot for him. And then all of a sudden it's like fading. It's like, well, he comes back to campus and then all this, and he sees like all these things. Notre Dame's got like more of their, you know, personnel and recruiting staff in place along with Mickens. You're seeing that. And it's just, you got to get guys to campus. Once you get people to campus, that switches everything. And then you can see too where, you know, the reviews on like Aiden Pouncey come to campus, and it was like, well, it didn't sound like it was like, you know, things were trending in a good way for him. But if you don't get those guys on campus and they don't, whatever, then you never know. And really like to be able to win recruiting battles for Notre Dame, it's just a place where they're not going to bring guys in January when it's freezing.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not going to have too many of those junior days like that. Obviously, like you get guys in during the season, but they didn't have like as many like of the big home games this year. So they didn't have that. So that's part of it too. Right. So, and then obviously too, there's the transition to the new staff and all that. And they really, momentum was going to happen just based on them getting these people on campus. And then it was going to be like, well, what can they do when they get these guys on campus? And we're seeing like, you know, pretty encouraging results so far. But, you know, like you said, we'll see.
And I think also getting him on campus while the team is playing or like practicing and doing things where it's like, you go out there and it's like, dude, man, they got dudes out here. Like they have some real players. And it's like that sort of thing is just like, you know, it's just kind of, I guess, invaluable. Like I'll throw up Jadon Blair since we were just referencing him. Like this guy's weren't around as a freshman, right? And so you're Joey O'Brien, you say, oh, like I look just like him, you know? And we talk a lot about proof of concept. Like when you have Kyle Hamilton, who very shortly is going to sign an extension, a monstrous extension. Like it will break records for safeties and secondary players. And like that's coming up. You just had Xavier Watts, who was a first team All-American. We won the Nagurski Award as the best player in college football. Like you have two different profiles of player who came into Notre Dame as safeties and are leaving as stars, right? It's just an easy sell, you know, and that's kind of why it's like you got to just once you get these guys coming in and you can turn over players who are like really good, it really helps with recruiting. Obviously, getting the recruiting staff sorted out, getting that all taken care of. MTA is at practice and he's around, right? Like you have the whole staff is now locked in and they're all focused on one thing. The team's running around doing things. It's all much better. And then Rodney Dunham, the 5-star defensive end. There's been a ton of movement on him. A lot of predictions are coming in on him. This is one of those things where it's like it seems like he likes Notre Dame and he would be huge, right? Like getting him would be huge. You and Mike talked about how he's a better prospect than Keon Keeley was in terms of like you can just see him hitting a lot more. Keon Keeley was more of a like, man, look at these physical tools. Rodney Dunham has that, but also like you watch him play and it's like, okay, this is a different kind of caliber of player.
Yeah, I think it's the main thing is that, he has that just sky high ceiling, but he also has like his floor is going to be so high. Like it would be surprising if he didn't hit big. He's one of those guys. And frankly, too, like, I mean, obviously you can find guys edges that aren't like, 5 stars that end up being like just studs. That happens all the time. But when you have a guy that you think like, man, this guy could maybe step in right away and like be someone who's, rushing the passer, the day he steps foot on campus, he could be somebody. He's that kind of prospect. He's just unbelievable traits, just like elite, elite testing numbers. You see him just like, obviously like he's a good football player. Like he is someone that is good at football. You see him make plays and make instinctive plays. You see him make do things like turn the corner as a pass rusher that are unique things that you don't see from everybody. And then you also see like that when you add that kind of thing to like a guy who's like the motor is just like go all the time. Like, I mean, he's a pretty special prospect. Like he could be just an absolute like 3-0 like stud in college. So Notre Dame ends up getting him. Like I would say that is the biggest. Since Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt, I'd put it in that kind of like, hey, you're getting this caliber of a guy. There, for in my opinion, that's where he would be at.
So look, we continue. I believe this sort of momentum is going to continue with prospects, just because again we're getting the Notre Dame's getting them on campus, and they're getting to see them, and the staff is all together and everything. So I think this is going to continue. I think this is when 2026 has kind of kicked off in earnest here. Like they have really started that push of trying to build out this class, and that's good. I want to have a discussion, just a quick one, about Notre Dame's NIL operation and like where they need to be making their moves with these things. And, we always talk about fit, and Notre Dame doesn't want to just throw the bag at guys to get them to be interested in Notre Dame, right? So like if you have a player who comes in and it's just like Notre Dame really likes him, but they're not sure how much he likes Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's kind of run, second or third or whatever it might be. That Notre Dame is reticent to throw a big bag at someone like that because it's like Notre Dame doesn't want a player like that to be interested just because of the money. That's not going to work. It's not going to work at Notre Dame. That's not how it goes. When you have Rodney Dunham, when you have Osborne, when you have O'Brien, like Caden Finley's coming to campus, like he likes Notre Dame, Braden Robinson, like when you have players that you are leading for, like that is when you talk about you got to offer these guys like the money, like you got to throw the back, like that to me is where it's like you offer them something where it's like, whoa, like that is over market, right? Because you can't go in there at a market offer and then let other teams kind of go back and forth. You don't want to go back and forth. Just blow them away and end it, right? You want us, we want you. We're going crazy, right? And make them think, whoa, like we're closing up shop here for our recruitment because like we like Notre Dame already, and now they're making a commitment to us that is like they are standing by their word and how important we are to this program. This is where I think Notre Dame needs to go with it. When people talk about the money and stuff, Notre Dame has it. They just have to spend it a certain kind of way with the players that they really, really want, that are top flight players. That's my opinion. I want to get your thoughts on this because it's just kind of something I was thinking about kind of on my own. I haven't talked to you about it. I haven't talked to Matt about it. I want to throw that out to you and see where you stand with that.
I mean, I do think, you absolutely should prioritize, specific players, for it and make that, I think you make it, like you said, like kind of make it part of like your closer, right? To be like, hey, here's all this, and we know you're really interested, and now we're going to talk this, and this will be like, we are competitive or better in this area, so this is why you should come here. This is you have all these other reasons to come here. Now here's the finisher. I like that idea, and I think it's great. Obviously you have to always know whether or not, like, right away. It's just there have been guys too that when you notice that there's some guys that like, yo, Notre Dame's in on, they really want this guy, and then all of a sudden the guy visits and it's like right away, oh, he didn't fit. It's because like right away the only thing they want to talk about is the bank, right? And when that is happening, not that some of those guys don't end up being studs, because I mean there's plenty of guys who are like that end up being good, but generally, like, those aren't guys that are about team glory. You know what I mean? That isn't kind of like fitting into the culture of kind of what you want. So I think it's always like a fine line of like what you want to do and present it, right? And like, and then I also think too that once recruits talk to other recruits, these agencies, like there's agents now obviously that are involved with all of this. They know, what's what and who's getting this and who's getting that and who's offering this. And so they know if if there's certain people who are looking for certain things, it's like right away. It's like, well, like Michigan, or not Michigan, like Miami, Oregon. It's like, this is what they're given. Yeah. This is what they're doing. This is what's going on. You're going to get this kind of money, and so on and so forth. And that's got to be the kind of thing that has to be there for, Notre Dame. People have to get familiar with, like, this is exactly how it is at Notre Dame. And I think once that is communicated and like gets across to as many people as possible, then it just becomes something that people don't have to worry about. It's like one thing that I thought was like interesting with not to just bring it up again, but that Chad Bowden, he just was talking about their plan for NIL and rev share and whatever, and everyone's gonna have a plan for that, but it's like, what can your plan be that is so different from everyone else when there's only a set amount of money that is supposed to come there? And also too, like, if you're USC and you have Juju Watkins, I feel terrible that Juju Watkins tore ACL, obviously. Awful. Awful to see that. Hopefully she fully recovers. But USC, you can attract an athlete like that in another sport. That person needs to get some money too, and that's going to take away from whatever football and all that kind of stuff too. And obviously they're going to probably want to spend money on basketball and all this. It's not just football. So I think it's one of those things where you can kind of have a plan for it and you can have all this kind of set up, but ultimately it's just going to come down to the individual and what each one of these guys is kind of looking for. Like, I don't think that, I'm sure if Gerby Lambert was someone who wanted to just like go for the biggest bag and just go around, he would have just went to wherever he wanted to go. He wanted to Miami or whatever. Yeah. It's just like, but you got to want that. And just like you have to specifically want things that Notre Dame can offer you. Like Elijah Burris was just asked during his, media availability. Yeah. And just said it was like the perfect, everything has met his expectations. Notre Dame is the perfect spot for him. Everything has met his expectations, which is awesome. I think anyone would want to hear that about like a freshman coming in, because you're like, wow, this guy's happy. He's got a chance to really succeed as a player here because he's getting exactly what he thought he was going to get. Right.
Yeah.
And what you don't want is here's somebody that you give money to, and it's like, I chose it because this was the most money, but I didn't really want to live in Indiana, or I didn't really want like the spiritual aspect of the school didn't interest me at all. And this, and I don't know about this or that. Right. Like it's got to kind of be the whole piece of it. And I think you just want the NIL to just kind of be like even really. And just, because ultimately if you're paying someone specifically at Notre Dame to just be like, come here because this is the most money you're going to get anywhere else, that's not going to work out good for Notre Dame.
Yeah. And it hasn't. Right. And that's why I kind of make the distinction of like, make sure ahead of time, and let it be known. Like it's okay to have that reputation of like, look, Notre Dame will go in with the money, but it's got to be the right fit and they're picky, right? Have that reputation. It's fine. Right. Honestly, because if a player does get that offer, then it's like, oh, like I feel special. They don't offer this to whoever, right? They're not just trying to do that. Like they think I fit. And it's like, it's special to be considered a fit at Notre Dame, right? And what they're looking for and what Marcus Freeman's culture is about, right? Be picky on that front. I think it's totally fine, right? The like fit is so important. And it's true with the football team and your media company. You need the right fit for what you want to do and what your company can do and your social media page and your highlight reel, whatever it might be. You got to find that fit. And when we want a good fit, we go with VSR Media. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emory Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Let's talk some quarterbacks, Jamie.
Well, just wait a second. That was a top 3 seg, Greg. We have to acknowledge that. We have to tip our cap to the king of segs. That was it might be my number one. That was Thank you. That was elite. That was elite. Everybody in the chat acknowledging it as well. Just wanted to point it out.
I appreciate it. Sometimes you swing and you hit a grand slam. And I thought that was a good one. I felt good about it as it was coming off the bat. I was like, "Ooh, this is all right." Let's talk some quarterbacks. There was a discussion yesterday, a very good discussion, I thought, on Power Hour about Angeli, Minchie, and Carr, and the comments that Gino Gaduli had made about Angeli, about how he carries himself like he's the starter right now. And there's that experience piece. And I think, a lot of people were not upset we're not happy about it. And, Steve Angeli you compared him to, I think, Ian Book at one point. Was it you or was it Mike who said that?
Oh, I said it just in terms of like how you can see that's how people talked about Ian Book in terms of like he carries himself this way.
Yeah.
The players believe it. There's a belief in him from his teammates and stuff like that. And I think that is, I mean, they're obviously very different players, but just, I think from that perspective, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and then that led to some deranged anti-Ian Book comments in the chat that I cannot handle. Let me tell you something. All right. Like, I think the way it worked when he was in the playoffs, when he went undefeated in 2018, when he went undefeated, well, not undefeated in regular season, undefeated in 2020, the way it worked is he didn't get to play Indiana at home in a playoff game. He didn't get to play in a Sugar Bowl where one offensive touchdown that was like a 14-yard drive was good enough to win. He did not get to play in that situation. His era was basically like if Notre Dame this year went to the playoffs and immediately played Ohio State and got bounced. Like, they never lost to anyone who wasn't the eventual national champion, right? They never lost to that. So I think it's like, oh, Ian Book wasn't good enough. Well, it was kind of different circumstances at the time. I think people need to settle down. If any of these quarterbacks turns out to be good as Ian Book, like, I think Notre Dame's going to win a lot of football games. And the way the defense is built, like, I kind of feel like if Ian Book was on the quarterback of last year's team, like 2020, 2019, Ian Book was the quarterback of last year's, I think they would have been just fine. Just my opinion. That's kind of how I feel about that. That being said, I think the thing with these quarterbacks, and I was thinking it as you guys were talking, is it's hard for us to really give the pros and cons on Angeli versus Minchie versus Carr because he's the only one that's played real snaps.
Yeah.
Minchie's played snaps, but like real snaps. Like Steve Angeli came in a playoff game and had to engineer a drive to get Notre Dame points. He started a bowl game. And granted, Oregon State, wasn't a great Oregon State team. They were totally depleted from transfers and things of that nature.
Yeah, but he was still lights out in the game. Like,
he played well, right? Like, and I understand he took sacks and that sort of thing. And I think you made a good point about, like, he takes sacks because it's essentially like how a player will make a play with his legs. He doesn't want to give up on a play. I remember one play, I think it was in the Purdue game. He takes a sack and the guy comes right in his face because he wants to throw KK Smith open on like this corner route, on like an improvised route. But he can't, but KK Smith ends up getting knocked to the ground and then the play completely gets destroyed. And then he takes it in the face, right? Like, it's that sort of thing. You can coach that sort of thing out of somebody.
Yeah.
So he does take a lot of sacks and it is a concern, but like, it's just hard for me to be like, I want Angeli or I don't want Angeli versus Minchie or CJ Carr because I just don't know what those guys can do. And I'm not at practice, so I can't even say. Like, it's just pure speculation. And that's where you kind of get yourself in trouble as an analyst like we are. So that's kind of how I felt about that. And just kind of get your thoughts on that sort of thing.
Well, I think people kind of like poo-pooing that he did this or he's got experience and the other guys don't, like that doesn't mean anything. Is just, I mean, that's just wrong. Like, he's been in the program longer than everybody else. He's been the backup longer than everyone else. He's went and played and done well in games.
Yeah.
So that matters. It also matters too, because when you hear Gaduli talk about it, to me, which this totally makes sense, Minchie or Carr will have to be like, it can't be even. If it's even, Angeli will start the first game of the season. That doesn't mean he's going to start the whole season, but he will start. He will be the starter at the beginning of the season. And I think that's totally fair. For one of them to be the starter, they have to be better. And like noticeably better. Like you're like, these guys are making better decisions. They made this throw. Steve can't make that throw. They did this with their legs. They escaped this rush. All of these kind of things. That kind of stuff is going to matter. So Rajon asks, is this like 93 Powis McDougal? I mean, I don't think it's anything like that because that was like a different situation where it's like, everybody on the team believes in Angeli, and then they're like, who's this freshman guy coming in? One thing that was a true freshman, Ron Powis coming in.
Yeah.
It
would have been like Carr last year.
Would have been like Carr last year, or Jimmy Clausen when he first came in, or whatever, right? Yeah. It would have been like that kind of thing. And it's not this. So it's not the same. And I think everybody kind of knows, because for everything that I've heard is like, there isn't like beef between any of these quarterbacks. Like one thing that has been consistent over like, I would say for a number of years now, is that the quarterback room like likes each other and are like actually friends and like root for each other. Yeah, they're competing against each other, but no one has like ill will towards somebody to like, I hope this person does bad so I get in. Like no one's thinking that. They're thinking like, I got to be better than this guy to win the job. And obviously this is a different situation where you got three guys going for it. So, I mean, it could get a little bit more contentious. Maybe they're not going to go and like, hey, let's go, let's go to mini golf after practice, or maybe they're not going to do that. But it's not a thing where I think there's going to be factions on the team of like, these guys want this guy wants that guy. People want whoever the best player is to play. And I think that's why too, when you look at someone like Clarence Lewis, it's a different situation because he's not the quarterback, but Clarence Lewis, when he decided to leave Notre Dame, right? And, last spring, he decided to leave. The guys were like upset because they're like, man, they loved him. He's like such a good dude. He's a good team guy. He was a good player and all that. But no one was like, man, the coaches screwed him over, because they knew that it was like these other guys were better, like it. So you got to go out and prove you're better. And that's what it's going to kind of like going to be all about. I had a situation when I was at Idaho State. There's a guy who was great dude who was the starting Mike linebacker. He started as a true freshman as a Mike linebacker, played 3 years. He was like 100 tackles a year, each one of those years. Well, in his last year, which was like my second year there, or second or third, I can't remember now, but we brought in a junior college Mike linebacker. And this guy was just an absolute stud. He was so freaking good. And he was just better than the guy who was the returning starter. Even though that guy had been like a 3-year starter who had done all this, he was just better. Well, as much as it sucked to see Jason was the guy's name who lose the job, Jason Meter, as much as it sucked to see him lose his starting job, he understood it. He was like, this guy's better than me.
Yeah.
And they found another role for him where it's like, okay, well, they're going to run more like Okie package, which was like a 3-down thing where they're going to run 2 inside linebackers, and they're going to have him like do a okay, well, you're going to get to rush the edge and do this, because they wanted to still make him like, he was still a captain. Like he was like a 2-time captain, but it was like the other guy was just better.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Right. So it's like the thing with like Jalen Hurts and Tua and all that kind of stuff too. It's like, you can handle it one way or you can handle it another way. And it's just, people don't care as long as is a guy has earned it and done it. So right now, with just the Star Spring and nothing else taken into account, Angeli has done more to earn being the number one guy. If they were playing next week, he would be the starter. And I think everyone could understand that.
Yeah. And I think like Minchie and Angeli have been backups for long enough to where it's like Minchie could have passed him if he had been better. He could have.
It's happened all the time.
Right. It could have happened and he didn't for whatever reason. And maybe it's because Angeli's playing well enough to where it just hasn't happened. You know, like we don't know that. You know, all I know is that when it was time for someone, the first backup to come in, second team guy, it was always Angeli. When it was time to have a starter, like they didn't even like share reps in the bowl game. That could have been a situation where Minchie shared reps in the bowl game and they didn't do that. You know, it is what it is. Like I'm not at practice. I'm not evaluating these things. But I think as fans, you know, people listening to this are fans, I assume. You have to be open-minded about it and just let it play out, right? We're not at practice. We're not grading these guys. We don't know what they're asking of them. We don't know what it looks like. We're just not there. You know, so like Sid Irish says, I'd rather go with the talent. The coaches, that's not a thing. The coaches can't say, oh, we're going with the talent. No, they're grading them. They will decide, and that's it. Like, so I just don't. I understand, like, we might want a certain type of player. We might want Kenny Minchie because of his, like, the way he throws and his athleticism or whatever it might be. But, like, if he's not playing better, he's not playing better, and that's just the way it is. I do think it's true. Rip Jules said, my bet is Angeli starts the season, but is likely replaced by Minchie if the Irish lose a game early due to quarterback play. I do think it's true that no one will have the leash that Riley Leonard had last year.
No.
That will not be the case. Like if I don't even think they need to lose a game, a la like Wimbush in 2018 with Ian Book. Like I don't think anyone will have that kind of leeway that Riley Leonard had. It's just like if it doesn't look good and they grade it out, even if they're 2-3-0 or whatever, which they'll probably have to be pretty good if they're 3-0, just because you're playing good teams.
Of who you're playing in the first 3 games.
We understand the point here. Like,
yeah,
if you're not playing well, they don't have a problem with getting other guys going. And by the way, that's what they'll tell the other quarterbacks. Like, look, the starter to start the year is not set in stone. It's not going to be that forever. You know, that's a likely scenario as well. You just got to be patient. It's kind of
I'm glad you brought up too, like the Wimbush to Book and that thing too, like, is a perfect example of, like, very similar to the Kelly Bryant. Beating Texas A&M and being great in that game, and then Trevor Lawrence being the dude, and then them winning a national championship, right? Like, that could easily happen. Like, that is something that could happen where in the first game, Miami, everybody knows, people have nightmares about the 2017 Miami game and how that went. And that could be something where the poise of someone like Angeli, because he's been in that moment, is able to get them through that game, to win that game. And maybe as you go along, you say, oh, they played Texas A&M and he didn't play that well. And then whatever, and so on. And then they say, okay, well, this person's going to take over now. But also, sometimes it just doesn't even happen where it's about, like, one guy's playing bad. Sometimes guys just get better and they just start, like, taking off.
Yeah.
And which is also why, as much as I would love if we had more access in the spring and we're able to watch them more at the beginning of spring, it's probably not a great thing, because how you look in the third practice isn't how you look in the 10th practice for most guys. And you're going to see growth from these guys, specifically Minchie and Carr, right? Who are going to get more reps with the ones than they've ever gotten the entire time that they've been there. And then you see how they benefit from that over time, right? And you see how, like, confidence can grow and all that too. So I think it's just one of these things. It's like, it is. We're going to talk about it all summer. We're going to talk about it the rest of the spring. I get it. It's important. I certainly, remember what it was like when it was Kaiser and Zaire, and that was like something that was, that was contentious, and that was a different thing. That's not this kind of vibes, but that was a very thing where it was like, even though I think Kaiser was Kaiser was way better than him in not just at in the games when they got into the games in the season, but he was better than him all spring, and he was better than him in fall camp because they did give us like quite a bit of access then.
Yeah.
And it was fairly obvious. And really the only reason I think Zaire kind of got the benefit of the doubt of like, hey, you're going to get this is because like Brian Kelly made that promise to him, like, or else it wouldn't have happened that way. Right. So, but I think you're going to kind of get to have this whole spring. They're going to kind of get to go through it, and things happen, things change. Sam Hartman was like worse than Tyler Buckner early in spring. And then, I mean, it's not just a spring game, whatever. It's not a complete thing, but he looked miles ahead of Buckner on that day. And I think that was partly influenced Buckner to get in the portal the next day. Right. So a lot can happen.
Yeah. And speaking of, 2018 and that with Ian Book, I'm actually talking to Ian Book later today about that. I'm going to do a podcast with him, and I'll release that tomorrow. I want to talk about the quarterback battle specifically, and just like what is being communicated to these quarterbacks. How did he feel on a daily basis? Like how was it graded? How did they communicate with them? How they communicated with each other? Like what he felt was important, what ended up being important, like all those things. Like, I don't think we have a very good understanding of like what goes into this, either with the coaches, with the communication with the coaches, with the players, and, everything that goes into that. So I'm going to talk to him about that. So subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, look out for that, hit some notification bell. You'll see that. That'll come out tomorrow. I'm going to talk to him later today. It's very interesting, just like the whole, where does the team go? Right. And the good news is that someone put up here, just run the ball. And the good news is Cajun Irish says, run the dang ball. Whoever the quarterback is, you got a bunch of guys you could just turn and hand it to them, and they can go do stuff, whether it be Jadarian Price, whether it be Jeremiah Love, who might be the most exciting player in college football this year, or one of, you got a Heisman Trophy candidate back there. Just hand it to him. You can do that. That's real good. The last thing I was thinking, Jason Smith said, is there less media access this spring? I don't know. I mean, certainly less than the BK era. I mean, in 2019,
there is less practice viewing, not access in terms of like Marcus Freeman as head coach. They've given way more access in terms of
talking,
in terms of interviews with players, interviews with assistant coaches. A lot of times with BK, you would only get the coordinators, and that's it all spring. Yeah. There were some other years that were different. There used to be like a media day that they would have in August, where that would be the only days that you got a chance to talk to, say, like Mike Elston or someone who wasn't a coordinator, right? Like you get those days, and or that would be the only day you got a chance to talk to Clark Lee as a coordinator the whole time. Like he wasn't giving interviews during the season like there were now. So there's more access in that, but there are less access in terms of practice viewings. But I think it's like purposeful this year, partly because of the situation, but also partly because of just, how they're structuring spring and all that. I mean, we'll see what it's like in the fall, but there hasn't been like a ton of access compared to BK. They used to give like a little bit more full viewings, but at some places they give nothing.
It's very
so we take what we get, and we're happy that they give us access to it and allow us to be there to watch when we're there. And you can still, even from the days that when I've been there and you're getting only the 5 periods, you could still get stuff from there. I've always gotten stuff from each one of those days. You
just have to kind of cater what it is you're trying to get out of it, basically.
Yes.
And that helps. I think it was 2019. I don't know if it was fall camp or what camp. They BK gave like 5 open practices, like full practice. It was insane. When I saw like what the schedule was, I was like, this is a dream. Like this is amazing that all the and then after COVID, it all changed. And not just like you said, it's not just Notre Dame, it's like around the country. Like I know I've talked to Carter Carls, who covers Texas A&M a bit, and like they get so little of anything at all. It's kind of a bummer for them, but it is what it is. Anyway, Notre Dame women's basketball on to the Sweet 16 on Saturday at, I think it's 1 Eastern time, against TCU, who they lost to in the Bahamas in a tournament there. Notre Dame was, they were up going into the fourth quarter, and then Haley Van Lith kind of took over that fourth quarter. They've certainly bounced back. I don't want to say I predicted it. I said on Dimes with Dara, talking to Dara, I thought it was going to happen just because they had time and there's too much talent on the team. There's too many good players that they have. And if they're playing well, they can just wipe a team off the court. I compared them to the Ohio State football team about how they had lost to Michigan and looked really bad, went into the college football playoff, and then started wrecking teams when they had time off. I think Notre Dame women could do this. I do think TCU is a good football team, good basketball team. Haley Van Lith, obviously, she's had a ton of experience. She's a big-time player. She's certainly not afraid of the moment. And they're pretty good inside players too, which is it could be an Achilles heel for Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting, Jamie. What did you see over the weekend? How do you feel about them at this point? Sid Irish says Leah Tu King has been a huge addition. When she's playing well, when Sony's playing well, they're very tough to beat.
Yeah. Leah Tu King. Wow. What a game. And Sony, I think you just pencil in. She's just been just lights out. Even as they were losing those games, like Sony was carrying the team, even in those games where they weren't doing well. She was playing fantastic. I just can't imagine obviously she was going to be a high pick anyways, but I can't imagine someone who has improved their stock more in terms of like where they're going to be in like a WNBA draft. Like she might be the number 2 pick. Like, I think that's on the table. And she's going to be a good pro for many years. I think it was so awesome to watch them. You could see it was great that the games were at home too, obviously, because the crowd could get totally behind them. But just the way they started out, specifically the second game, like, man, the way they started out that game, and just were on fire. But like, they were playing with confidence, but you could see, I think that to me that stood out was like the ball movement, just the joy that they were playing with. And obviously defensively, they were just really like on it. And I think though, like that's something that you don't kind of worry about, going forward, especially in these games, to kind of like refocus it when you're playing all these teams at this high level. But it's going to be about like, if they could continue kind of like, moving the ball like that and like kind of spreading things around. Cause I think as good as Hannah Hidalgo is, and she's phenomenal, but when she's like an ISO player and like can be like a ball stopper a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think she does stuff too where, which I actually think it has been to their benefit that she has been off the ball more, and Olivia Miles is more of the point guard, because she looks to create for herself more than she does for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And when it gets too focused, when she's hot, it's feed her and just let her cook. But when she's not, like, they need to run the offense and get into that. So I think that is going to be like ultimately whether, they beat TCU, probably going to play Texas after that. I mean, every game now, it's funny because it's like TCU, Texas, both teams they played earlier this year. Obviously, they beat Texas in OT. But, and then from there, it's just like every team, it's like teams they've seen along the way. Like it's all these teams, because it's there's so many good teams now, but their draw is just going to be so. The only team they have it would be South Carolina, I guess, that they haven't seen.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's going to
like
be
maybe UCLA, but
and maybe
they're
UCLA.
on the opposite side of the bracket.
They're on the opposite side, and I think that could be who they. I mean, that's who they would probably play in the final, because I think UCLA, especially now that Juju's out, I think UCLA would be the favorite.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's very fortunate for UConn in that sense.
Oh yeah,
sure, because they're in their bracket outright.
Oh,
I just saw it too. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Troy Taylor
fired at Stanford. I mean, a lot of bad stuff going on over there, and it's going to be hard for them to find a coach at this point, just because. I mean, it's March, end of March, right? Spring ball is going on.
I mean, I think for Stanford, they're like one of the few schools that you could make this move at this time of year, and like the kids aren't committing because of Troy Taylor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and then obviously they hadn't done enough to really bring belief into like, hey, this is what I'm kind of signing up for. So, I mean, who you're going to get as the head coach at this time, they're probably going to have they'll have an interim now, but you should make a hire for who is going to be, the future. Man, obviously I had no idea about any of this stuff with Troy Taylor. I don't think most people did about any of like the kind of stuff that.
Yeah. Like you don't know, past. Like how would you know that he's just like a prick who's bullying people and just like
we had no clue. I will say that I thought that just him offensively, what they did, like I thought he was going to, like this year, even though they were going to lose Alec Manor, like I thought they would take a step this year just because they've taken the lumps playing these young O-linemen for these last 2 years. They got enough guys coming back now that the O-line's going to be like at least passably better, and they have like enough skilled guys to go around. And he is a very good play caller, obviously unbelievable opening script guy. And I thought that they would have a chance to be pretty feisty, like kind of like maybe make a bowl game under him. But I was worried about where they are on defense, because they just really haven't developed enough there, and they're not getting any quick fixes. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who they get for that job. Like Stanford, like I just mentioned this on the cord too, right? Like it couldn't have gone any worse for them with the whole end of David Shaw and all that too, because if all the conference expansion was going on 10 years earlier, they would have been in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They would have been in the Big Ten. Yeah. They would have been one of Washington, USC, UCLA, and whatever and Oregon. They probably would have muscled out Washington at that time. It would have been Stanford and Oregon.
Yeah.
Would have gotten in because they're obviously it's just dominant in Olympic sports, or they were, dominant in Olympic sports. And then they had, their football program was like a top 10 to 15 program for multiple years. And now, like, it's ugly. I think whoever inherits it is going to have a better situation than Troy Taylor inherited.
Yeah.
Inherited a terrible situation. But also you're inheriting a situation where the guy sounds terrible.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to go in there and like rebuild culture. You can't get a guy who's just like a taskmaster or whatever. You have to have like kind of like more of like a player friendly, like good guy. I don't know. It's tough, man. I think Stanford's in real tough for going forward to, be successful. Because even if you look at like, say, Cal's just been hanging to Justin Wilcox. Like, how does this guy still have a job after so many years? He's just like right there, just like 6-6, kind of like doing nothing.
But that's probably fine for them,
I mean, it seems
not everyone can be great. You know what I mean? Like at some point, it's like, Phil, this is a good team that people enjoy. You have your social media team that gets people excited. You know, like not everyone can be a power. It just can't.
I guess not, but I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting. I don't know. Off the top of my head, because I mean, everyone always thinks about like alums or guys who work for like guys who were assistants under Shaw or guys who were assistants under, but there's no guy that is there that is like the next level guy that, makes sense.
Yeah.
Really. So, I don't know. Andrew Luck, general manager. It's going to be a big hire for him.
Maybe he'll do it. Maybe he wants to be the coach or the interim coach or whatever it might be. But we'll monitor that. We didn't get to the pro day stuff, but we'll do that on Thursday because that's when Notre Dame's pro day is. So we'll talk about it then. I'm efforting. I'm trying to get Dara on the phone here. She's in Hungary. She's probably at practice right now. Anyway, so I'm trying to get her on. We'll talk more women's basketball, do a pod with her. I got Ian book later today. That'll release tomorrow. So again, hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. So whatever it is, we go live. We got the Ian book interview coming out tomorrow. And then Jamie and I will be back on Thursday talking more Notre Dame football. So that'll do it for the show. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.